Next don't ever tattoo over anything raised. Moles. Sometimes you'll see little whiteheads or, pimples in the lash line. Anything raised at all. You certainly don't want to tattoo over a pimple or a little whitehead because your needle could pop it. And then you're going to end up with that fluid that's inside kind of coming out and getting into your open skin, and that you get an infection. It could cause a complication or an infection. So if clients have any, pimple, if they end up with a pimple or a whitehead or anything like that in their lash line and they're due for an eyeliner procedure, then we reschedule them, And if the client comes in and they have a mole on their lash line, then I tell them, look, can't tattoo over that mole or that growth. Sometimes they're skin tags, moles, skin tags. I can tattoo right up to it. Then I'm going to have to avoid it, jump over it, and pick up right after it and continue on. So don't tattoo over anything raised. And I'm just going to be honest. My personal opinion is it looks funny. Doesn't look complete. You see a gap in the line. And usually, most times they're on the bottom. Sometimes they're on the top, but my experience is mostly they're on the bottom. But I always suggest that they can go get it removed. They can go get it removed, and then give it 3 or 4 months to heal, and then they can come in, and then we can do a nice seamless line across the entire bottom. And some people will opt to do that. They'll opt to go get it removed, and they'll stay in touch with us, and then we schedule them accordingly. And some people do not want to get it removed. I don't know. They like their mole or they like their skin tag. They have no desire to remove it. And they're perfectly fine with us avoiding it and having that little gap. So just never, ever, ever tattoo over anything raised. Okay. Don't use carbon unless you are super experienced with a lot of eyeliners under your belt. Stay with 100% iron oxide. 100% iron oxide. And that is going to be super difficult for people in the EU now because, new EU laws, pigment laws, new bans and restrictions. They want all the pigments over there now to be a hybrid, not 100% iron oxide, more hybrid, a mix of carbons and iron oxides in order to pass testing and be REACH compliant. So that just makes things, I think, a little bit difficult for the newbie using eyeliner. They're not really going to have a choice to stay within all iron oxide. And that puts them at risk for migration. Because even if it's a hybrid, even if it's 50% iron oxide and 50% carbon, that pigment still has carbon in there. And so that carbon, the molecule is just so small that it migrates. It can migrate. If, lots of things need to happen for it to migrate, blood vessels, broken capillaries, you go too deep, wrong needle angle, things like that will cause a migration if you're using carbon. So, I don't know what, artists over there just getting on eyeliners are going to do. They don't really have a choice. They don't really have a choice with the new bans and restrictions on pigments over there. But if you do have the choice and you're just learning eyeliners, please stay with an all iron oxide. And just because you do get good with an all iron oxide, that doesn't mean you have to move over to carbon. Look at Amber, our little Amber. She's been doing eyeliners 7 or 8 years now, and she's super good. And she has never moved over to carbon. She just has no desire. She doesn't want that stress, that anxiety, that worry of going slightly too deep somewhere or a slightly wrong needle angle and causing a migration. So she just has no desire. I don't think she'll ever move to carbon. And And, you know, her work heel's nice, solid black, and it lasts a good long time. So the myth that iron oxide doesn't implant well or doesn't heal black or doesn't last long is just that. It's a myth. It's not whether it's carbon or iron oxide. It is all artist technique. It boils down to the needle you're choosing, the movements you're doing, your stretch, your depth, and whether you're saturating. Are you packing? I call it packing. Are you a packer? Do you know how to pack pigment? Some people don't know how to pack pigment. They don't know how to highly saturate, right? But we do. We do. And we also know how to, you know, do light saturation and powdery and, you know, and all that stuff. But yeah, so don't use carbon unless you are super experienced. And again, if you do use carbon, you're super experienced, you've done 100 eyeliners, your depth's on point, your angle's on point, you are very good at eyeliners, and you want to use carbon, or you're currently using carbon, that's fantastic. I get carbon out. Sometimes I like to do, sometimes my last couple of passes carbon. Do not use carbon on lids that are super red, super pink. You have visible broken capillaries, visible blood vessels. Do not use carbon on lids like that, no matter how good you are. Broken capillaries, blood vessels that are visible, obvious why you would not use carbon. Carbon's going to get caught in that blood vessel, or capillary is going to travel. It's going to move. It's going to run, right? I always say carbon has feet and it will run. The reason I say, even if you don't see visible capillaries and visible blood vessels, but that eye, you know how sometimes you can look at someone's eye and the eyelid looks really pink or looks really red? You don't necessarily see capillaries and blood vessels, but there's just a red tint or pink tint to that eyelid. That means the capillaries and the blood vessels are right under the surface. So you could really hit them, you know, even working shallow. So just, you know, always examine your canvas with detailed eyes, and you're looking for things that can mess with your pigment, mess with your work, and lead to results you just don't want. So examining eyes. All right, so don't get in over your head. And by that I mean, if you're new to eyeliner, start with lash enhancements. They're beautiful. They look good on everyone. There's not a lot of design or symmetry per se with a lash enhancement. You're filling the lashes. And I don't mean a skinny line through the middle of someone's lashes. That looks terrible, and it's not artistically or aesthetically pleasing. You fill the width of the lashes. Some clients have, you know, maybe 3 rows of lashes, so if they have thinner lashes. And some people, you know, have 4 or 5 rows of lashes, so they got a nice thick, you know, natural lash line. So you want to fill the lash line, the entire width of the lash line. And yes, you do have to consider symmetry, and you know, you want to make sure both sides, you know, look even and are symmetrical, but not as much as if you're going outside the lashes and you're really doing like a full-on eyeliner. So that, I always say that's a good place to start. You know, we got Amy right now on eyeliners, and that's where we started her. That's where I start all my artists here at Girlz Inc. They're only to do lash enhancements first. And then once they, you know, get super comfortable with lash enhancements, then I move them into like smaller, medium-sized eyeliners. And then we move them into, you know, like baby wings. And, you know, it's a progression. Baby steps. So don't get yourself, you know, don't get in over your head. Baby steps. Start out with lash enhancements and progress into thicker eyeliners, progress into corners and wings. And when you do progress into really beautiful corners, I love doing corners, man. I call it the wedge. Amber and I do this wedge and wing course. We've got a wedge and wing online course on the Girlz Inc. Academy. And there's no tattooing per se on that course. It is an eyeliner mapping and design course. There's lots of courses out there for mapping eyebrows, right? Lots of courses for mapping eyebrows. And there's, lots of different steps. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, lots of different steps, measurements, and all kinds of things we do and that are being taught to perfectly and symmetrically design eyebrows. And there was nothing on eyeliner. Yet here, I have always had my steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, where I marked how I got my corners, where I was going to start my wing. I always had that. And then, of course, when Amber and Michonne started here, I taught them that. And then Amber and I started teaching hands-on. And Amber and I were like, no one's teaching eyeliner design mapping. Where to look, where to dot, where to mark. And all that, to do all that. So when that client comes back 6 weeks healed, that eyeliner is exactly as thick as you want it to be. And it is perfectly symmetrical with a beautiful aesthetic design, even on both sides. And there is a formula for that. And so Amber and I teach that formula on the Girlz Inc. Online Academy. So, and it's really affordable. What do we charge for that course, Amber? Amber. Is it $150?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
I think it's right about $150. It's a great course. It's an excellent course, you guys. And it's a whole formula on where to dot, how to mark, how to draw in, and map to pre-draw, get an awesome pre-draw on your eyeliners. And what that does by pre-drawing, marking and pre-drawing, what that does is it also eliminates it from coming back too thin. And this is what newbies struggle with constantly, over and over and over, constantly. Thousands of newbies, even not newbies. I mean, I just got this DM like 4 days ago, and this is somebody who's been doing eyeliners like 3 or 4 years. So the eyeliner client leaves, and the eyeliner looks like it's a great thickness. It's as thick as the client wants. Yes, that's how thick I want it. It looks great. The artist, awesome, looks great. But then client calls 3 or 4 weeks later, and she says to the artist, all the thickness went away. It's too skinny. The thickness isn't there anymore. So now the client has to come back with a super skinny little line, skinny line of pigment. And that artist now has to almost practically redo that whole eyeliner because all that thickness gone. So, and why that happens is because of swelling, right? Eyeliners, it's not that the pigment's falling out. Not at all. And that's what some newbies think. They think that the pigment's falling out, and that's not what's happening. That could be what's happening in addition to, but what's happening is it's puffy. The eye, even if you're using a single needle, is going to get a little puffy, right? Skin is reactive. When we go in and out of skin, make punctures with a needle in skin, especially eyelid skin, it, at the very minimum, puffs up. In a lot of cases, 50% of my cases, they get swelling. They're swelling, And so what happens is that eyeliner looks nice and thick, looks really great, and everybody's super happy. But when that swelling comes down, gone. Kind of like the Seinfeld episode, when George jumped in the pool. I'm a Seinfeld fan. Anybody watching this podcast, you're going to know exactly what I mean. Shrinkage. There's shrinkage. Doesn't everybody know about shrinkage? Well, you know what? There's shrinkage. Yeah, when a dude jumps in the pool, just like George explained on that Seinfeld episode. But there's also shrinkage When we're talking eyeliners, I see you going, Willow. You're going to use that, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah, shrinkage. There's a thing called eyeliner shrinkage, and it's an epidemic for newbies. And so, yeah, it just shrinks right down to nothingness or hardly there. And then think of all the work that poor PMU artist has to do again. And that shouldn't be happening. It doesn't have to happen. So with our Wedge and Wing eyeliner mapping and design course, that won't happen. It won't happen. So that course will eliminate a ton of work, a ton of touch up, and for the PMU artists. And it's one of the best courses I think I ever put together. And it's super helpful. And hundreds of people have taken it, and everybody's loved it. So a great course. Yeah. So actually, when you set that eyeliner client up, that eyeliner client should not be saying, "Oh yeah, that's the perfect width that I want. It looks great." The eyeliner client should be saying, "Oh my God, it's not going to stay that thick, is it?" And then here at the studio, we have to tell them, no, it's not going to stay that thick. It's swollen, so it's expanded. When it comes down, when the eye starts healing and the swelling comes down, then it's going to be that perfect width, that perfect amount that you wanted and that we agreed upon, that you paid me for, right? So clients don't want to pay $500-$600. They leave with what they think they paid for. Then they get home and they end up with a skinny little line. And no PMU artist I know wants to have to constantly be redoing their eyeliners and building up that width, appointment after appointment. I mean, that just sucks. And that will make you hate eyeliner.